Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Knoll. Welcome back once again to another edition of the Movie Battleground. And today we have two competitors heading up against each other, both of whom are sitting just right below that 500 mark. And today could mean a lot for them because obviously every player wants to be at the 500 or above. So hitting that would obviously do a lot for the confidence. But also, we're at that point in the year now where we're starting to kind of wind down the season. And it means that whoever wins tonight will have a shot at potentially playing again before the year's over. The loser season, of course, as I've said before, with all these upcoming matches, is over. Before we get into it, though, I do just want to plug last week. We came back from our brief hiatus. We had two videos go up on the weekend, so check those out if you guys haven't already. We had our tournament discussion where me and a couple of panelists kind of broke down the upcoming tournament that will begin next week, talked about some different prospects and who we kind of think is going places in this tournament. And we also had our first regular match back from the brief hiatus we took during the earlier part of September, which was myself taking on Medee or Raymond. No spoilers yet, obviously. Go check that match out if you haven't. But sure to say, it's me and Medee. So at the very least, if it was, not a great match, it was entertaining. We certainly tried. But with that said, let's focus on these two tonight. We have Austin Howell and Jonathan Peck, who enter this from kind of two very different positions. Austin had this big bursting performance in his debut, and it's kind of been one of those things where, his career in Battleground has not gone the way you would want it to, but you also can't fault him because two of his losses are two guys who are the current champion and the guy who just challenged for the title. So it's not like you can fault him for losing in those. It's just not what you would have thought. Jonathan, meanwhile, started off a little rougher. He went 0-2 pretty quickly, but his last time out, and he has had a bit of time off, but his last time out was a win for him, his first. So now he's looking to kind of keep that momentum up. And we'll see which of these two guys can stick that landing. But we will go ahead and get into this. Introducing our first competitor, entering with a record of 1 win, 2 defeats. He prefers to be known as the Phenomenal One, and what a nickname to live up to. He is Jonathan Peck. Jonathan, welcome back to the Battleground, sir. It's been a bit since we've had you here. How are you feeling heading into this match?
I'm doing good. Yeah, and yeah, my nickname is a little bit more misleading for some people, judging by my record. But I will add that some of my losses by one, I'll just say by 1 point and one score differential. So basically, you could go on either way. You can might view me very differently, but it's not an excuse for that. That's why I perform. But anyway, I good had to be back. Took a long time for it. It's like I don't know, it was like 2 or 3 months the last time I performed a match, so I might be a little bit not so rusty, but just a little eager to come back and get a better record enough that at least I can try to be stay competitive as possibly can. And I don't know. I hope I can do better than what I give it myself credit for, or hope my opponent will realize that. So I hope it was something I
Absolutely,
will live
yeah.
up to.
So with that, there's not really much more to say. I think you said everything right there. You're here to win. You're here to put the effort in. Yeah, man. Battleground is a tough game like that. I mean, almost every match you can, when you break it down really to votes and stuff. Everyone here is so close, but it's just the littlest of things that make the difference between a title contender and someone who's near the bottom. So yeah, we'll see what it looks like for you, man. But I'll go ahead and sit you in the back for a moment and bring in your competitor, entering with a record of 2 wins and 3 defeats. He is Austin Pez Howell. Austin, same question to you. It's been a bit more recently since we saw you. Obviously, you had your match against John Marr, and you also had that exhibition match that I put you in against Henry. And while neither of those did go your way, I'm assuming you're still rocking the same confidence as always. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, you have to rock the confidence, Aaron, because that's what Battleground is all about. If you come in slacking or feeling down, you're not going to have the confidence to win. I come in, like I say to you all the time, I come in and play every match like it's a title match, like I'm playing for gold. I do even do that in my exhibition. So I play to win. I will not end my year with a losing record. I can guarantee you that tonight. You can take that to the bank.
All right. Well, same thing there. A lot of confidence as we expect from Pez at this point. So I will not waste your guys' time any further. I'll bring Jonathan back in, and we will go ahead and get into this game. Movie Battleground is a game that is the best of 5 rounds. It is first to 3 points win. Each round of debate is going to be worth 1 point. Should a competitor get 3 points in a row, that will be a victory by knockout. And if it is a 2-2 tie at the end of 4 rounds, we do have a fifth question. It is called the blind round, and we will take care of that should we have to. But with that said, focusing on those first 4 questions, the competitors were given them ahead of time. They've had a chance to do as much prep as they possibly can for their answers. The way that it'll work is they will get 60 seconds to open their argument. That'll be followed by 2 minutes to kind of expand, explain, rebut, whatever they choose to do with their 2 minutes of time. They could sit in silence for 2 minutes if they like. I really don't care. You guys will get 4 minutes to openly discuss, go back and forth, get in your points respectfully about your different choices, and then you will get 60 seconds to close up, wrap up that argument, and get your final points in. Back stage, we have 3 judges in John Marr, Brian Nussbaum, and Stacy Morris with us. They will join us on screen, at which point they will make a decision based off of what was said in the debate over who gets the point. That said, guys, are we ready to go?
Absolutely.
Ready.
All right, so we will go ahead and jump into it. And at this point, as the month of September is drawing near, we are, of course, heading into Halloween. And speaking of Halloween, we have another Halloween movie, supposedly the end of the franchise, although we've heard that about 3 times before already. Halloween Ends, as it's appropriately titled, will be releasing this October. For those of you who like the vote of confidence of a theatrical release, it's also going to Peacock now, so take that for what you will. But we're going to talk about that franchise, and we're going to talk about movies that hopefully Halloween Ends is better than, because like every long-standing franchise, the further and further you get, the lesser and lesser the movies tend to get. The question on hand is, what is the worst Halloween film released in either the 1990s or the 2000s? Over the course of that decade, we had, of course, Halloween 6, Paul Rudd's, I believe, feature film debut. We also had the kind of second timeline rebooting with H2O and Halloween Resurrection. And then we had the Rob Zombie films, which still look better than the Munsters. My God, what is that crap? Let's go ahead and get into it. So behind the scenes, because Austin is the higher ranked competitor, he chose to go first on questions 1 and 3. Peck, you will go first on 2 and 4. But with that said, I'll stop the yapping. I'm going to bring your timer in. Boys, I want to wish you both the best of luck. And Pez, when you begin speaking, the timer will start. I'll make sure you get your 2 seconds back.
It's funny you should mention Rob Zombie, because this question was very easy for me to come up with an immediate answer. The answer to this question is quite simply Halloween 2, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, to be specific, released in 2009, 4.8 on IMDb, 35 Metacritic rating, in the red, solidly in the red. This is 2 years after Rob Zombie's Halloween remake, which I know some people are, fans are a little split on, but by all measures, it's a well-made film. It's a pretty good remake, and it does something different, which is what remakes should do. Stick to the general plot, but do a little something different, give some fans a little something fresh. However, with Halloween 2, this is a movie Rob Zombie did not want to make. He only did it for the paycheck. He has openly admitted that, and they let him basically give him full creative control. And as we learned in Tropic Thunder, you never go full zombie. It is a mean-spirited, disgusting film that is full of exactly 0 amounts of fun. It is a joyless film and is easily the worst of the franchise in this time period.
And that is time. For those wondering, that is not the exact quote from Tropic Thunder, but like with all quotes from Tropic Thunder, when slightly adjusted, they are far less offensive. With that said, Jonathan, you are up next. Time starts when you begin speaking, sir.
The funny thing Austin just mentioned, it's kind of the same exact my thoughts on my pick. Mine is kind of more worse than that. Funny enough, you mentioned about Rob Zombie. I actually picked the first Halloween movie he did, mainly his remake of from 2007, written and directed by him. And there's a common phrase some casual moviegoer audiences about horror films in general, like, the reason why the people are very detached with horror films or basically horror movies in general. This film is more partially the reason why, and basically commits to sort of like the cardinal sin of pretty much all Halloween films in general. It makes Michael Myers relatable, and he should never have been relatable at all. I'll explain more explicit detail when we get to the main arc, and besides all that, There were parts of the film it was just really, really bad, and I'll explain to more detail. So my selection will be Rob Zombie's 2007 version of Halloween, first one.
All right, and that'll be a wrap up on the argument there. We have Rob Zombie's Halloween versus Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. And I just want to take this time to inform people that this is like the fifth or sixth time Rob Zombie's Halloween films have been brought up on this show. We all know that Halloween 6 is shit, right? I just want to put that. No? Okay. All right. We're going to argue Rob Zombie again. All jokes aside, Austin, back up to you. 2 minutes, sir, when ready.
Halloween 6 is a guilty pleasure of mine. I take offense to that. So the problem with Halloween 2 is he takes a lot of things that he set up and we appreciated in the first in his remake of Halloween and completely turns a 180 on them and makes everything unlikable and disgusting. This movie opens with, I kid you not, a 20-minute dream sequence. A dream sequence, one of the worst tropes you can possibly do in films in general, and he stretches it out to 20 minutes. But I kid you not, that's not the only one. There's not one, not two, but three dream sequences in this movie. Almost 30 minutes of the plot is spent on dreams. Absolutely ridiculous. There are zero likable characters in this movie. It takes the characters we did like from the original and completely flips them. Dr. Loomis, played by Malcolm McDowell, is completely flipped into a money-hungry, fame-seeking douchebag and asshole when we actually liked him in the first film when he was trying to help Michael and we sympathized with his failing plight. It does a complete 180 on Laurie, who they try to explain that she's suffering some kind of depression, PTSD, but that's about as surface level as it gets. She simply wears a Nirvana shirt and mopes around a lot, as opposed to Annie, her friend, who is doing the same thing, but is essentially the same character from the original film. We don't like her at all. Every side character you encounter is completely despicable and unlikable, including two people in that opening scene that joke about necrophilia. I kid you not. And everybody you encounter, other than maybe Brad Dourif, but Brad Dourif doesn't get enough time to actually for us to like him at all. It has ridiculous hallucinatory gobbledygook and metaphors that make no sense, with a white horse, with Sherry Moon Zombie reprising her role as Michael's mom, just showing up randomly in this white gown with this white horse. It's never explained what it is, that she's somehow talking to Michael. Hobo Michael, by the way, who barely wears his mask in the movie and just walks around aimlessly and encounters people randomly, and that's who he has. He has no mission. He has no purpose. Like I said, everything's a dream. It's all a hallucination. It's all bad. It's all nonsense.
And time. Argument aside, which cut of Halloween 6?
The producer's cut, because it's more wacky and silly.
Okay. I'm just curious. Peck, back over to you, sir. 2 minutes on the clock.
You know, the funny thing you mentioned about the characters being unlikable in the sequel, though, I'll be perfectly frank with you. They're already unlikable in my movie to begin with. So basically, what you think of they were likable from the last movie just kind of baffles me in that decision, because you mentioned like Dr. Loomis by Malcolm McDowell. Basically, he's turned like, oh, likable guy we see for the last movie, turned to be unlikable right here. He was already unlikable from the remake of the first one to begin with. In the remake, even after you had that conversation with Michael in the cell, in the mental ward, he creates a sort of like a seminar and profits off of it to begin with. He was already an unlikable guy to begin with. Even his sort of his encounters throughout the near the end of the film, it's like about the shoot him, like all that stuff. It's just like pretty much most of it, including him, are unlikable in my film to begin with. And here's some of the major flaws of that film. Is that's just not only that. Even if you take out the Halloween mythos as a horror film, is paid by numbers at best. It paid by numbers, predictable, boring, and just ruined with the original Halloween film. And I know the supposed is a remake, supposed to be different, but even if you're trying to be more different than even with the original Halloween, it was just not a slasher film. It's not a slasher film because Halloween is basically with his relationship with Michael and her sister. And this movie just and the remake just barely get used to it at all. You spend most of the time with Michael, and this is sort of like basically one major flaw with the movie. We learn too much more than what he is. It's the same kind of mistake after this movie, when it came out, he learned to one cinematic flaw. It went to that terrible prequel remake of Becca 07 with Hannibal Lecter, and this movie kind of starts along with it. He remains Michael. The movie's not subtle. He puts unnecessary profanity for its film. It's very excessive for the first 5 or 6 minutes, and it's white trash excessive, and it's uncomfortable, but not in a good way, and just really horrible and uncomfortable to watch.
All right, that's going to be time on that. We're now going to move on to the 4-minute open debate. As always, just a friendly reminder, be respectful of each other, allow the other to speak, don't dominate the whole time. But with that said, time starts when the first competitor does speak up.
Not a slasher film. Body count in the teens. Okay, predictable. When he completely does something that the original one didn't do, and that's dive in to Michael's backstory. Again, sticking with the original premise and doing something new, something that modern audiences have never seen that they demand. Especially when they go back and watch that old movie, they want to know reasons. The movie itself, it's a little wonky like that when modern audiences watch it. And unlikable Loomis is weird because he's actually very sympathetic to Michael. He tries to get in touch with him. He's a very likable president. He's a very charming guy, and even their initial conversation is very charming. We're supposed to relate to the mom, by the way, and her plight of dealing with all this nonsense around her, not relate to the psycho killer who kills cats. That's kind of silly.
Look, you mentioned about his mother, and can I just say, but his mother is legit horrible. Like,
his mom is not horrible. The
acted.
stepdad is horrible. The siblings are horrible. The mom actually loves him. The mom's actually trying to improve his life and actually make his life better, and actually loves him and wants to get him, wants to have him, make him have a good life. Sherman Zombie actually gives a very good performance in that movie.
Good,
one of her best ones.
Really?
Yes.
She's never been good as actress at all. Even some good, competent.
She's fantastic in House of Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects, and in this movie because she's not being over the top and wacky. She's being a very relatable mom. Actually, who's in a tough situation.
Say something like that. My thing with that is basically I mentioned earlier in my opening about the white trash stuff right here. It just totally doesn't fit. And we were supposed to relate to Michael and his parents didn't hug enough. Really? The point of Michael Myers is basically he's an unnatural killing machine who remains out of control. We don't need basically sort of not only just parents and families just didn't hug them enough, or basically
what it does in this movie is it talks about that throughout the film. Loomis theorizes about what's going on with him throughout the film instead of just blindly setting down exposition like Dr. Loomis did in the original film. And the whole thing is we're seeing again something new that Rob Zombie's bringing to the table that we didn't see in the original, where we just saw a kid just snap and go off. In this one, we see the slow progression of his psycho nature. We see the slow progression, like he said, the nice mixture that kind of creates this perfect killing machine.
But here's the thing. Here's the major difference I counter to that, because with the original, it's very subtle right here. With mine, not subtle, at least at all. Rob Zombie does not do subtle. Even most of his films, even majority of his films, are not subtle.
Most modern films are not terribly subtle. I'm not even saying this is a masterpiece of a film. That's not what I'm trying to say. But the question asks for the worst film. The worst film is clearly my film that literally has no joy, no fun, explains nothing, just presents theories with nothing. We see Michael walking around with his mask most of the time. Most of the kills in that movie have nothing to do with the plot. It's just people he encountered in random fields, in random settings, in random bars when he's just wandering around. We have no idea what's going on with him for an entire year. We have no idea where he's been, where he's going. The movie sets up has the most ridiculous ending where Laurie is set up to be the new killer and forgives her brother after her brother just killed her best friend and the father figure in her life. It makes zero sense.
Look, here's the thing with yours though. At least some of the kills in your film at least are fun, or at least some more exciting. Mine were just, like I mentioned earlier, paint by numbers and predictable, and it's not even fun when your kills and your scheming of it are predictable and not thought
There's
out
actually some very fun stuff that when he's going around rampage around the hospital, it's very fun, and you actually have sympathy for some of the characters, like Danny Trejo's character, who's another likable character in the film that we get to know, who has who looks like Governor Michael like a mentor, and we actually feel bad for him when Michael kills him. There's things like that throughout the entire film. Characters we get to know a little bit, and we're actually sad to see him die. A thing that Halloween 2 absolutely lacks.
You mean what about the Road 2 guys are basically are borderline unlikable shedheads throughout the movie, and basically to repost it like that? And even Michael is your main protagonist or an unstoppable murdering psychopath, and we're supposed to do all of this right here, and that is the reason.
Is it an unstoppable psychopath in the original film? We just get more explanation as to why in this one.
And time. All right, we got 1 minute left on the clock for both. Pez, you're up first.
Look, the reason why Halloween remake, and I'm not saying again it's a perfect film, but the question is what is the worst? And it's absolutely not the worst. 6.0 IMDb, 45 Metacritic score, which is in the yellow, which means people are split on it, but there's a lot of people who like it. It uses the original score, which Halloween 2 does not. It just uses original music. It's completely forgettable. And look, it's actually pretty well loved among people. I'm right up there with the Texas Chainsaw remake. Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, but it's got a decent script. It's got good performances, characters you actually like and can get behind. It has a nice ending that's changed a little bit from the original, even when it retreads a few of the original waters. It changes enough with the ending, with Laurie on top of Michael shooting the gun and actually getting kind of the kill shot in there. It's a great ending to a movie that's pretty good. Again, I'm not saying it's perfect, but the actual worst film is my film that has zero fun, zero joy. Both films had the same budget. Mine was a hit, or excuse me, yours was a hit. The remake, $80 million, and people did not show up for the sequel because it was so bad. $40 million, only half of it.
And time. All right, Jonathan, back over to you. Final minute of the round.
And again, the reason why the 2007 remake is the worst one, because it negates everything we know about, not only about the original Halloween film, even with the sequels before that, before my film. Basically, understand, Michael's a killing machine. You don't need sort of like his mom and didn't hug him enough, or his family respect him, all that stuff. But even you try to get some sympathy with Michael, he pretends he's the anti-hero, which should never have done. Even your main horror villain is sort of like an anti-hero, and we're not supposed to cheer him right here. We barely get to even use with Laura. It's basically an afterthought in the movie. It just did next to nothing. And my characters were unlikable in the film before your film to begin with. So basically, it just really just cancels out right here. And mine is the worst one because it's paid by numbers, the kills are predictable, and just nothing is sort of like it's interesting in this movie. Even if you take out the Halloween factor to it right here, it was just like a terrible horror film along with it. And that's a crime and sin in this film, and why the 07 remake is the worst.
And that is time on the round. All right, guys. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and sit you both in the back, and I'm going to introduce our judges. There's nothing really to fact check here. Everything they said was correct, and I'm not going to bother looking up reviews of these movies. They're both fucking crap. We all know this. But who sold the crap better? John, I'm going to go to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
It's a tough debate to have when you have both Rob Zombie Halloweens trying to compete for what's the worst movie. But I got to say, Pez's facts and figures at the end, it's kind of undeniable. And Pez mentioned Brad Dourif, so I got to go with Pez.
All right. And then down to Brian, who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
Yeah, this is, as John said, battle of the two Rob Zombie films. For me, what sold me was Pez. He talked more about how bad his film is compared to Jonathan. Jonathan really gave me good points about Austin's film. So Austin talked more about it, so Austin's my pick.
Okay. All right. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to go ahead and set everyone in the back, and we'll go ahead and bring the competitors back in and move into question number 2. And we're going to be discussing one Mr. Jack Black, a actor who was recently back in the news after it was announced that following the success of his spin-off television series, Kung Fu Panda 4 is a thing that will be happening, joining the ranks of Toy Story with great animated film trilogies that also got a 4th film. Let's see how this one works out. But with that said, Jack Black is an actor who has done a myriad of work over the last 20 years or so. And so we have decided to focus on a little bit of a collection of it. The question at hand here is I gave the competitors a list of directors. These are directors who have worked with Jack Black more than once. These are his kind of recurring directors throughout his career. The question is, which of the listed directors has made the best overall work with Jack Black? Now, I'll go ahead and put the question down here. The options on the table, and I'm going to present these to the viewers at home the same way I present them to the competitors, which is I give them the list. In terms of the actual research as to who made what, that's on them to figure out for themselves before they pick. But the options here were Rob Letterman, Richard Linklater, Jake Kasdan, Jennifer Hugh Nelson, and Ben Stiller. And obviously some names are more recognizable than others, and these guys had to pick 2 of them. So we'll go ahead and get into it. That said, I'm going to bring the timer back up. And Peck, you are up first this time around. Time starts when you begin speaking.
I think it's very clear the best filmmaker Jack Black's ever worked with, and is brings like the 2 best qualities of Jack Black in terms of films: the funnier side of it and the dramatic side that we rarely ever seen. And the filmmaker I'm describing is Richard Linklater. And the reason why I picked that, and the 2 films, or 3 basically, when I'm using my main argument, is mainly School of Rock and Bernie. School of Rock, this is sort of like at that time when it came out, people were known to see Jack Black, with Tenacious D on HBO and supporting other films with high fidelity. But this is sort of the first real test, and not only him carry a comment like this, but carry a lead as a movie in general like that. And this is the film itself. It really elevated Jack Black for basically not only the funniest, but sort of like the more heartfelt story along with it. And then you got Bernie on the other hand, and we said we rarely see Jack Black even before it came out, and even some of it even ever since with Bernie along with it. I'll explain more detail when I get to the main argument. So that will be my filmmaker choice, Richard Linklater.
All right. And with that said, Pez, over to you.
When I look at Jack Black's filmography, I really take it as when you take the whole thing as a whole, Jack Black's much better when he's a strong supporting character rather than the lead. And if you look at the actual list of films overall, the ones where he's the lead, Gulliver's Travels, Year One, Envy, Bernie, Tenacious D, The Pick of Destiny, Shallow Hal, Nacho Libre, some real stinkers in there, as opposed to the ones where he's a strong supporting character, High Fidelity, Orange County, King Kong, The Holiday, Tropic Thunder, Goosebumps, the two Jumanji films, the list goes on and on. So I picked Jake Kasdan, a man who has really used him as a really strong supporting character in the best way. Four of his main ones of Orange County, Walk Hard, The Dewey Cox Story, and the two Jumanji films, Welcome to the Jungle and Jumanji: The Next Level. He's in Sex Tape briefly, but I don't really count that much. It's a quick cameo. But you know, the whole thing is Jake Kasdan knows how to use him well. Each of these performances is a unique performance that is uniquely to Jack Black to take a fictional character and really make it his. And each one is completely different from one of the other ones. None of them are exactly the same, and I'll explain why in just a second.
All right, and time. All right, so we have Richard Linklater versus Jake Kasdan. And for what it's worth, judges at home, I put up all the films that they appeared in, but I did not tell everyone they had to use those films. So again, the arguments are the arguments. I was just providing people with the support. That said, back to Pez when ready. Or not Pez, excuse me, Peck.
Well, the reason why that Richard Linklater is the best two halves of Jack Black, because with School of Rock, he brings it sort of not only with this Dewey Cox basically get kicked out of his own band. Basically, he needs sort of rent money to stay rent, and basically portrays like a substitute teacher. Now, the thing with that, here, you need to have a besides a performer to pull off very well. If you get the wrong actor to play that lead and play sort of impersonate a substitute teacher and doesn't feel a little charming, the film wouldn't 100% work. But when Mike Wright wrote the film, they wrote specifically Jack Black, and it took Richard Linklater's selection to basically give it out to sort of the best capabilities, best of Jack Black in that film. Basically, he's likable, friendly around the kids. He is basically trust somebody, even though he's portraying someone else in the film. If he portrayed to someone a real life teacher in real life, it's hey, I can relate to that. Hey, I want this guy to be my teacher along with it, and that's a really given the great gravitas of great of a talent of a director, Richard Linklater is, and it shows you just with arguably the right script and right director along with it, Jack Black will be great as a lead and maybe charismatic in the lead with it. And it's along with Bernie, it really brings a different side that we rarely see in Jack Black, and basically does dramatic roles along with it. And this with Bernie, basically a real life person, basically a mortician in Texas, basically made this widower and basically had to sort of go a little lucky, little nice guy, loves the community, but except the community hates his new wife and moved dead. When the film gets progressed in the middle, he started agitated along with it. There's a point in the film that brings a little sinisterness right here, even though it's more happy lucky sometimes. It brings one brief moment you saw in the film in the garage. It just pops in the gun along with it. It just takes rarely a filmmaker to balance those two halves of it. And I think Richard Linklater bring the best of qualities with Jack Black.
And time. Apologies for the late pull on the timer there. Austin, back over to you.
So let me break down the four I'm going to talk about for Jack Black and Jake Kasdan's relationship. The first being Orange County, one of his big breakdown early roles as the kind of lovable loser. And it's the best version of that, playing Lance, the brother of Colin Hanks in the film. He doesn't get a ton of screen time, but every scene he completely steals. He's completely charming, even though he's a complete fuck up, but he's great. It's the best version of that. And really, and just to get ahead of myself, Dewey Finn is basically just an amalgamation of Lance from Orange County and his High Fidelity character, just kind of mashed together with a clean shave. Walk Hard, he plays Paul McCartney in a great cameo in that movie where it's brilliant what he does. He takes the character and he literally does a different accent for each line that you don't pick up on the first time, but when you go back and watch it, it's kind of brilliant what he does. Not even really trying to do an impression, just trying to make you laugh. The two Jumanji films are really layered performances when you look at them, because Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle, Jack Black is playing the avatar of Oberon, but it's the character of Bethany played by Madison Eisman inhabiting that avatar. So it's Jack Black's physicality, but he's having to act like Madison Eisman playing Bethany. So it's a really layered performance, actually, much like something in Face Off, where it's Nick Cage playing John Travolta playing Nick Cage, et cetera, et cetera. Jumanji: The Next Level does the same thing, but it's a completely different performance. It's a sequel to a movie, but he's given a completely different, unique performance in that sequel, where he's playing the avatar that Fridge inhabits, Sir Darius Blaine, and so basically he's kind of acting like a young black man in the movie, and that's kind of what he does, and it's a whole new performance. And I think Jake Kasdan figures out a way to use these same characters in completely new ways and let Jack Black make them his own, and that's the great thing about it. Notice he didn't talk about Bernie that much, because Bernie's a weird movie. It's a dark comedy based on a real guy. The problem with Bernie is that the real guy is more interesting than Jack Black's performance, and he mixes in real people in that movie that make it awkward, because you're more interested in the real people and what they have to say rather than the actors overacting and doing it. You'd rather see a documentary than the actual movie.
All right, that is time. We're going to go into the 4-minute open discussion. Time starts when you begin speaking.
You can go first.
Look. You mentioned his character in Orange County. Mine's based like that, but way better and more cleared out, along with Dewey Finn and School of Rock.
It's just extended with time. It's just extended with time. If that character
here's the thing with that is basically when the film more progresses along with it, he kind of sort of changed throughout the film, though. Like, even then he sort of got caught along with it. He was sort of making a lie on here. He had to basically sort of realize that not only that it was terrible along with it, but he also had to inspire some people along with it, not only the students, but even the principal played by Joan Cusack, who was once sort of like throughout the beginning of the film, a little uptight, meeting one of the principal right here. He changes her along with it. Like, even then, he impersonates like a teacher on the film. He was basically sort of like, if you kind of like a teacher in the movie, like it kind of most along with teachers along with it, at least it means a little likability to it.
But the problem is,
it takes the actor to had to bounce that out.
The problem is he overdoes it. It's overacting, though. Like he's trying to he amps it up completely in the movie when he's in front of the kids. He tries to play the heartfelt moments, but it doesn't really work that right. That's why he's best when he's in his comfortable environment, when he's a strong supporting character like Jake Kasdan. Just something he wasn't ready for.
Look, first off, right at point, look, you mentioned a sort of supporting characters. Some of the supporting are cameos at best. Mine's with the Jumanji films along with it. You describe half of them are just cameos at best.
Orange County is not a cameo. He has about 25 minutes of screen time in that movie. That's way more than a cameo.
He's not in the film on that long to have that more significant.
Yeah, because he has multiple 2 to 3 minute parts, which is what a supporting character is. You show up throughout the movie, you steal scenes, and that's exactly what he does in Orange County.
But look, here's the thing along with it. It's like School of Rock basically sort of like shows you like that brings that little intensity to it. A little overacted, but then he was trying to make a point when he was teaching about the history of rock along with it. It was into the kids. So basically sort of, he didn't even try to be one responsible teacher. Like, even he was going to one of the scenes, you just find Zach Chan, this band right here, just pulls him out right here. It's kind of like something, with some kids who go through some field trips along with it, and do some kind of bad things along with it. And he becomes,
you're
like I mentioned, the mentor in the film.
About the plot. I'm talking about the performance, which is what the question's asking.
That's the reason that performance works well right here. He's going to take that way to blend in that role very well. That's what he does at School of Rock. And let's go back to mention on Bernie for a second. And like, that's a brain like a little dark humor along with it. And let's be honest, it's kind of hard to like sort of like accept that it's like a mortician, sort of a murderer along with it, but he kind of needs a little tightly performance along with it to basically pull this off. And you get not only Jack Black cast in the role, but you need to take a filmmaker.
But here's the problem though. Here's the problem with the Bernie
performance.
performance though. The real guy is more interesting than his overacting of that person is, and the problem is we get to see a lot of the real people in that movie, and they're way more interesting, than the actor, which is why I want to see a documentary. And the problem is that movie didn't click with audiences at all. 10 million box office. Richard Linklater has a history of having movies on Rotten Tomatoes that are way lower in the audience rating than the critics rating. The critics love the movies, but the audiences don't connect to them. Audiences connect to my film. They love Orange County. They love the two Jumanji films, two of the most highest grossing films of those, and Jack Black is a big reason for that.
Look, let's be honest. Both our films are well regarded. Like, people love School of Rock to begin with, so basically that's scratch half your argument when it said.
Yeah, no, it doesn't scratch half the argument because Richard Linklater tried one that succeeded and then tried one that completely failed, and you have to take the failures in with the successes. The failure.
We're not talking about box office or career was fine. We're talking about performance that's overall work along with it, and that's the reason where Richard Linklater pulled out the two best halves of Jack Black with Bernie and School of Rock.
But him playing a real guy does not let Jack Black create a character on its own. He's better with
create a character basically
He's not creating. He's based on a real person, so it limits the performance. It completely limits, and he's miscast in the movie. Should be somebody like Philip Seymour Hoffman who can ride that line between the drama and the comedy.
And time. All right, we have 1 minute left on the round. We're going to go back to Peck for the final minute.
Again, you're kind of undersold at basically what Jack Black is doing both in my films. He basically took, let's be honest, two characters are kind of like unlikable people to begin with. Like, one guy is basically a murderer, the other one is just a personation than a guy to begin with. That both scenarios could have gone some people like serious trouble, but you gotta take an actor or basically have the sort of that balance along with it that might like him enough to basically surprising root for him along with it. So basically, that's the reason we take like a filmmaker like Richard Linklater, who has a little blend in that sensibility. Like, even with Dazed and Confused with Matthew McConaughey, basically sort of like on the fly like that. So basically, it's going to take like a filmmaker to do it. And I mentioned, Linklater bringing out the best two halves of Jack Black. The funnier side, basically, with School of Rock and Heartfelt, and sort of the serious and dramatic side, and a little surprising, like heartfelt moments with Bernie. And I think that's the reason that he's the best collaboration with Black. It was along with Richard Linklater. So.
All right, that's time there. We'll go back over to Austin for the final minute of his round.
And again, what Jake Kasdan does best is he uses Jack Black's strengths. Like I said, in the two Jumanji films, they're very layered performances where he's playing somebody else essentially, and it's just like Face Off. It's not just him doing an impression of somebody like in Bernie, or just playing an extended slacker character like he is in School of Rock, which he'd already done in Orange County very well, I might add, and High Fidelity, which he'd basically done the same thing. It's just an extension of that put into the lead role. I mean, it's the best of everything in this one. He's a cameo in Walk Hard that steals the movie because of what he chooses to do with scene. Again, using his creativity, not just playing a regular person and not even playing the person that's interesting in them. Bernie works way better as a true crime story. There are true crime documentaries about that. I'm not supposed to like and be sympathetic. You just talked about Halloween. We're supposed to like a murderer? Well, that dude murdered an old lady and extorted her for all her money. I'm not supposed to relate to that, which is why Richard Linklater, it's hits and misses with him. Audiences don't like it, critics do, and there's a disconnect there. Everybody loves all the stuff Jake Kasdan has worked with Jack Black in.
And time. All right, so that's going to be it for that round. I'll go ahead and put both of you guys in the back and bring in our judges. So the one real quick cleanup here, because as it was said, every movie that was referenced in the actual discussion by the competitors was pretty much well reviewed. The only thing that was worth checking is the concept that Richard Linklater's films score far lower with audiences than they do critics. So obviously, when you look at the bulk of his directing career, including every film, that concept I'd say is actually pretty proven well true. There's only one real instance in which the audience score is massively higher than the critics, and that would be 2019 film Where'd You Go, Bernadette. But other than that, if they're not on par with each other, then the audience score is generally much lower than the critic scores. Specifically, when talking about Jack Black's three films, the one that wasn't discussed, most likely because it is the newest of them, it only just came out this year, Apollo 10.5, A Space Age Childhood, which you can check out on Netflix. It is actually a pretty solid movie. It has a 91% critic score, 83% audience score. To go to the two that we're talking about, Bernie has an 88% critic score with a 73% like rating from audiences. And the one that might surprise people is School of Rock has a 92% critic approval rating and a 64% audience approval rating. So it's actually not as high as you may presume, given School of Rock was discussed as more of an audience film than even a critics film. With that said, though, Brian, I'm going to go to you. Based on what the competitor said, who gets your vote and what was the main selling point?
I'm gonna go with Pez on this one again. My story was about how Zach Black works better as a supporting character, more of a sacker type role, and he talked more about how his collabs work more better than Peck's, and Peck didn't really talk much about Burry that much. So what story on it was Pez.
Okay. And Stacey, I'll go down to you. Who gets your vote and what was the main selling point?
I also went with Austin for a lot of the same reasons, and I just heard a lot more from him about why Bernie and School of Rock aren't as great, and I didn't really think Jonathan hit on any of his movies that hard. I mean, he did say that the OC was a cameo, but it was countered correctly that it's not a cameo, so I have to go with Austin.
All right. Judges, thank you guys so much. I'll go ahead and sit you guys in the back, and we'll bring the competitors in as we move on to question number 3. And question number 3 is a viewer-submitted question. If you are a viewer, a player, or a competitor, or that's the same thing, or you're a judge, or you're whoever that somehow stumbles across this video, I always like taking input from other people. Sometimes you guys can come up with questions that I may not think of, so you guys can submit questions to the show. And how do you do that? Scrolling across the bottom is the instructions. If you want to get your question into a future Movie Battleground match, email me at officialaaroncanola@gmail.com. With your name and the questions, and that is the big imperative thing, is whether it's clearly stated in your email, because some people use their name for their email, or it's in the actual email themselves. Please make it clear who you are that is sending it to me, especially if you're a competitor, because if I don't know who it is, I'm not using the questions. That's the one thing I don't allow here, is for people to debate their own questions, because that just seems a little unfair. I mean, as somebody who writes questions myself, you inevitably can't help but think of answers while you're doing it. So as long as I know who it is, you have a chance of getting it in. And the question you guys are being asked today was brought to us by my most recent competitor in Mr. Madi Raymond. The question at hand here is, what is the worst movie set in space? Now, we're not necessarily talking sci-fi. We're not talking a specific type of space movie. We're just talking, is it set in space? What's the worst? With that said, Austin, we're going to go back over to you to start this one as I bring in the timer. It'll start when you begin speaking.
Well, I'll do you one better. It's not only set in space. My movie has space in the title, and the movie I'm going to talk about is 1988's Space Mutiny, starring the great Reb Brown. Don't know who Reb Brown is? Well, his big claim to fame is he is the original Captain America from the horrendous 1990 film. He's a big meathead who can't act, and he definitely can't act in this film. 2.0 on IMDb, one of the worst films of all time. The only reason anybody has ever really even seen this film is it was featured on the Great Mystery Science Theater 3000, but don't let that fool you, folks, because that's the only way this movie is even remotely watchable is with the Mystery Science Theater 3000 brilliant commentary. You watch this movie on its own, and it's one of the most boring, low-budget, garbage films ever put to screen. Again, starring Reb Brown, who can't act, John Philip Law, who actually is a decent actor, but plays a character named Calgon, I kid you not, who just evil laughs his way through the horrendous plot, and also stars his wife as the sex appeal of the film, Sissy Cameron, who, I'm sorry to her, but she's 35 in this film and looks 60. And that's supposed to be our sex appeal, but I'll talk more about Space Mutiny in a second.
All right. And we'll go ahead and move over to Jonathan when you're ready. 1 minute.
It's funny, like you mentioned, like space, all that stuff. There are more ways than one. There was a go right here. And there's only movie that basically takes place in space. And basically, worse of it most in, it's the lack of trying. And the trying is the adventure of Pluto Nash. If those who don't know that familiar, well, you all know stars Eddie Murphy as Pluto Nash, who basically doesn't know what he does. So basically, it's notoriously awful, and it's notoriously really terrible when people watch it along with it. It's not on Blu-ray. It was critically panned. It's legit one of the worst films, not only the worst films of the decade, it's legit one of the worst films, basically, on Lifetime. Even Eddie Murphy said in an interview one time, it's like, I know there are 2 or 3 people who like this movie. Even he admits it, this movie is really shit. Even the worst part of it is right here. They have a production budget. They were made like $120 million between the production and the marketing in the film. To precise, they lost like
And
100. And, well, okay, let's play more detail on that.
All right, back over to you, Pez.
So let me tell you a little bit more about Space Mutiny. The movie actually opens with stolen, uncredited Battlestar Galactica footage. I kid you not. Stolen from the 70s television show. A completely uncredited, horrendous Atari graphic, Commodore 64 opening credit graphics, awful synthesized music. The sets of the actual film look nothing like any kind of spaceship or futuristic set you could ever put together on film. They look like complete warehouses. All this piping, steam, all the stuff you're not supposed to have in an actual spaceship, grading, lots of security rails all over the place. It makes no sense. It's a clear warehouse. The scenes we do get during the space battles inside the fighter look like Red Brown is literally sitting in a broom closet with drapes in the background. There's horrendous continuity in this film to where there are main characters that are killed off, and 2 scenes later they're right back on the bridge resuming their duties, so they can't even get their plot straight. Has a plot involving some ladies called the Valerians, kind of mind controlling some people into a mutiny on the ship. And let me tell you, if you love the Suicide Squad, Cara Delevingne doing her little goofy dance, get ready for that, because there's about 20 minutes of that in this movie, just them standing around a Spencer's electric ball. Absolutely horrendous. Look, the deal with Pluto Nash is it's a notorious bomb because of how the budget that it was. But again, I'm not saying it's a great film, but it's a mediocre film. But the problem is the question is asking for the worst. And when you're asking for the worst, a movie that's simply mediocre is not the worst. It had a $120 million budget, which is funny you mention that, because the money is on the screen. There's decent effects in this film. There's decent sets. There's some good concepts. It's set on the moon, kind of a space gangster film, which is really unique for the time. It's got a competent director, Ron Underwood, who directed City Slickers and Tremors and some other decent films. And he knows what he's doing. He knows how to get good performances. Got a great cast all around. A lot of supporting characters: Louise Guzman, Peter Boyle, James Redhorn, Joey Pants, Joe Pantoliano, and the always lovely Rosario Dawson. You can't have a bad film with Rosario Dawson. And Eddie Murphy's at least trying. He's doing his best. The movie was poorly marketed and just put out there at a really bad time, and that's why it bombed.
All right, back over to you, Jonathan.
So, funny thing between your film and my film is mine. The problem is what budget? That's the thing. Like my film, I imagine it have $120 million, and you don't see it throughout the movie. Like, really? Like, where is the budget of the movie? It's a place like a moon colony and moon, and that's it. I have the budget to basically spend on the actors who agree to be in this movie. And you mentioned it's trying. It's not trying the movie. It's painful to say that, but it's true. It's just like, and that was the worst thing about it is like they actually have a competent director behind it. That's the problem of it. They just didn't have the right idea what the vibe is going to be. And the problem is they play it too seriously. It was supposed to be like a funny movie along with it. It just failed it both ways. It also tried to be like a legit, like a space movie along with it. It even failed to try to be a comedy along with it. And even the plot things, that makes no sense. Like basically, he owns this little moon colony called Little America in 2080. Basically, gets a bar from Jay Moore, and basically went to gangster. And like 7 years later, basically comes around with it. And throughout the end of the movie, he basically comes with a clone himself. Like, really? Like, this is the best you could do with it? Like, it's just like this is not a lack of trying or lack of effort of it. That's legit the worst part of it. And it's just a little shock and baffled. Like, you can spend like $100 million on it, and you don't even see it throughout the movie. It's just like try like sort of like a TV movie along with it. At least it was a fun like a B movie budget. It was like basically like they know how baffle it is. Why try to keep it straight, but it just fails miserably along with it, and it just didn't have the right vibe of it. Every actor is in for a paycheck. Even the cameos along with it were just dreadful. So basically, just nothing is legit happy about when watching the movie. And basically, along with that, it just brings like the worst part of it. The worst part about it is like just wasn't that entertaining for either side of it. It just had legit issues. It was not getting pretty much right on the spot.
Sorry, that was on me there. Time is up. We're going to go ahead and go into the 4-minute open discussion. The timer will start when the first competitor speaks.
I'll tell you where the budget went. There's a lot of practical set design in that movie, which is sorely lacking nowadays in a lot of sci-fi films. It's a lot of green screen nowadays. There's a lot of practical sets. There's a good cast. Again, all the people that show up got paid really well and actually put in an effort. Everybody that shows up in your movie is somebody you're happy to see that actually tries and gives a good performance. I didn't even mention Burt Young and John Cleese and like somebody. Randy Quaid is actually really good in this movie. Like there's some good stuff.
Like this face along with it he keeps making throughout the entire movie, and it's not even funny and creepy along with it. It's not funny at all.
It's not the typical Randy Quaid performance, which is why it's interesting, because it's not him being the over-the-top drunk like he was in Independence Day. It's him trying something different, and Eddie Murphy and him actually have really good chemistry.
Fine. And basically, you mentioned funny enough, you mentioned the budget along with it. It's not like on sets. It just like basically render it basically. And mentioned on the sets along with it. They're like basically like in the same set throughout the majority of the movie. I feel like they just never went to the moon colony.
It's not in the same set. There's the club set. There's actually several club sets in there. There's the actual moon sets that are pretty good. There's sets within the vehicles. It's not just them sitting in a green screen. It's them sitting actual sets, actual cars. There's the mining colony. There's all the other stuff throughout the Little America that you're talking about. It's kind of a unique story. We don't see a lot of things where there's a colony on the moon. Most of the time it's Mars, which is kind of an overdone trope. But mine doesn't have a budget at all, which is on the screen. They have little golf carts in a chase sequence where they're smashing into each other. It's golf carts dressed with literal cardboard cutouts placed over them, then wearing really bad motorcycle helmets. It's absolutely horrendous. Like I said, did I mention the stolen Battlestar Galactica footage? They literally don't have any CGI in this movie. It's all stolen footage, uncredited. Your movie actually has a budget behind it, has good CGI, decent stuff going on in the beginning, setting up the actual colony. Like I said, Ron Underwood, good director.
And basically, after this film, he never directed a big momentum ever again along with it. And here's the thing.
He's a TV director now. There's tons of great directors who do TV now. That's what they do. TV's the new cinema.
Okay, here's the thing with that. It's like basically, you mentioned the budget. It basically, like I mentioned, every actor's paychecks. So basically, just like, if you mention anything, the only thing sort of a CG would be some muscle suits with Eddie Murphy or Rosario Dawson doing in that little computer thing. And I mentioned this earlier, basically about the ending. Like, what? Like, how is this? How you clone the clone of it behind?
There's a decent little twist ending to the movie, which is a nice little button. Again, I'm not saying the movie is absolutely fantastic or some kind of classic. I'm just saying it's fairly mediocre and like not. It's just not the worst thing ever. My movie is absolutely the worst, the most boring, the most joyless, the most tedious film out of the two.
Look, listen. At least with your film, it's like a fun B movie type thing. You mentioned Mystery Science Theater. Listen, even you will watch it with that. At least it was fun. How bad it is.
You watch it with that. That's the key. Watch it without it on Prime, and you will have no fun whatsoever. You will be bored out of your skull.
Look, listen. I had to tell you this. Like, even those bad like 80s B movie type things, sci-fi, it's something like Strand, like Ryan House. It was supposed to be sort of meant to be sort of like not to be having. We don't have a higher budget, so basically we're just gonna have sort of like shooting on right here. It's just sort of a trying with a B movie type budget. Mine has a real budget, and it feels like a B movie, but you shouldn't have with that huge of a money of a script. Terrible script, if I may add, and just keep reworking on the sets when they were making the movie.
Yeah,
and
it's a big budget, but everything's right there on the screen. Again, big budget and a flop doesn't necessarily mean bad. There were plenty of movies that were flops that had big budget. Things like Waterworld, like had big budgets that flop that were liked. I mean, again, my movie, even if you go on IMDb score 2.0 to 3.8, not very beloved. Again, I'm not saying it's a great movie, but mine's worse. That's what the question's asking.
Look. Mine is more worse because of the lack of trying to be phoned in is legit the worst part of it, and it just
all the side people that show up are absolutely not phoning it in. They're having a good time. They're getting paid. They're putting it on.
If you say so.
All right, we have 1 minute left on the round. Austin, you are up.
Again, my film has horrendous continuity, horrendous effects, stolen footage, and it's completely joyless. Again, without the Mystery Science Theater commentary, I want to make that perfectly clear. If you were to watch this movie just on Prime with nothing to it, then it is completely no fun whatsoever. But your movie, again, at least there's something to watch. There's always somebody showing up that you're happy to see. I ran down the list of people: Luis Guzman, Rosario Dawson, Randy Quaid, Joey Pants, all really good actors that are showing up, having a good time. Alec Baldwin even makes a cameo, and he's fun as kind of the head gangster guy, and the twist you just talked about at the end is fun. It's a good little sci-fi premise. It's a space gangster movie, which we don't get a lot of, kind of a space mob movie. And yeah, again, I'm not saying it's a great masterpiece and classic film, but I saw this in the theater. I worked in the theater in 2002. It was horribly mismarketed. Even working in the theater, I barely saw a trailer for this thing. They dumped it out there in a time when there was a ton of other stuff out with no marketing, and it just flopped. Flop doesn't mean it's absolutely horrible. The question's asked in the worst. Yours is not the worst. There's money on the screen. There's things to see. Competent directors. Mine has none of that.
And time. All right, Jonathan, back over to you. Final minute of the round.
my movie does not put any money on the screen. It basically like a set. Basically, they just never left set. It's just like they were decorated for every scene that they do. It just nothing imaginative. Just nothing. That's the coolest part of it. Said about a movie. It was about big amount of nothing. Nothing resolved. Nothing. Just everything. Just imaginative to begin with. In a set in space to begin with. They're playing it too straight. It basically just wasn't that funny when they were trying to be more comedically. It just failed at either end when they wanted to be. It just failed every single of it. There's just nothing over here. Everyone's phoned it in that movie. Even the actors are legit trying to do it. You didn't know the material was not good at all. It just never just really just pops out of you when you think about the I get it, like movies Obama, Miss Margaret, that's up. But even they try to like bury this up because they know the movie sucks so bad. It just does nothing, just really right here. At least for yours, it was a fun B movie type of thing. At least you get drunk and just enjoy how cheap it is right here. Mine, it just was not that fun.
And time. All right, guys, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and put you both in the back as we bring the judges in. All right, so the only thing to talk about with this is simply comparing notes on how bad these movies are, because let's be real, they're both bad. Space Mutiny is one of those movies from the 80s that it's kind of been lost in time, generally speaking, because there wasn't things like the internet back then. If a movie was really, really that bad, it kind of just disappeared into eternity. In terms of using the aggregator of Rotten Tomatoes, there are only 4 reviews posted, so the movie does not have an official critic score. However, all 4 reviews do fall under the Rotten category, so tentatively 0%. Space Mutiny has a 13% audience score. The Adventures of Pluto Nash has a 5% critic approval rating and a 19% audience score, so really not that much difference there. And the only real thing I could find about the production of either of these films, because it was talked about for both, is a quote from the director of the film, Ron Underwood, in which basically, to sort of paraphrase, he said that he loved working with the talent and the crew, and he felt that everyone on set was trying, but he, as a director, even felt on set that the movie just simply was not delivering on the humor aspect that people would come to expect from Eddie and people would expect from the film, and that he was worried about its final product even while filming. And again, that's really all I could find about the movie. There's not a lot about either of these out there, and quite frankly, they're not very good. So it's a wonder why. But who sold theirs as worse? Stacey, I go to you. Who gets the vote, and what was the main selling point?
I'm giving Austin my vote again, and he sold me with the stolen footage, the sets in the warehouses, the golf carts. Basically, it just sounds like the worst piece of crap ever. So he convinced me it's the worst piece of crap ever, which was his goal.
All right. And John, down to you.
I always think you have an uphill battle when you have a movie that I remember being released in theaters versus a movie that I remember seeing maybe 5 rows deep in somebody's VHS case. So Pez started on the 50-yard line, and I think Peck started the other end. So I have to give it to Pez.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much, judges. I'm going to go ahead and sit you guys in the back. If I can click the buttons correctly, because your winner by a final score of 3-0 in a knockout victory, Austin Pez Howell, pulling out the big victory. Austin, that is big for you, man. You are 3-3 now. You have your first knockout victory with this match. How are you feeling walking out of this?
No, I came in, again, with the confidence. You have to play with the confidence of a champion, even if you aren't. I've prided myself on being a championship-level competitor, even though I probably have the worst record, of somebody who boasts about that, and I'll fully admit that. I've taken my losses. I've taken my licks. But when I hit hard. And like I said, I came in here tonight with a mission, and that was to not end this season with a losing record. I was going to win tonight by hook or by crook. And if I had to knock somebody out to do it, I was going to knock somebody out.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It was a very good performance, a lot of confidence, a lot of the clear prep was there in the things you're able to bring to the argument. So I guess, obviously schedule permitting, which right now it's looking like we'll have just enough spaces to get just a handful of matches back in. And with that win tonight, that gives you the possibility of getting one of those matches in the remainder of the year. And there's no secure opponent yet, but there's a good few options on that table. You have there were 6 competitors who all held the roughly the same records, and you guys were going up against each other. So you won this match. We have Papa West versus Noah McCausland happening very soon. They are both 2 and 3, so the winner of that will be equal to you. We also have Kevin Poss and Chris Diaz, who are 2 and 3, so the winner of that will be equal to you. Also, if you wanted to try and punch above your weight, the winner of myself and Madi will get an extra match, and they'll need somebody to possibly play against. So what are your thoughts going forward? Is there any of those names that appeal to you, or what do you kind of feel?
Hey, listen, when I guest hosted my one Battleground that wasn't a total disaster, I tried to hold my own and hold it together best as I could. I think I asked Madi if he wanted to maybe rumble a little bit. I think we match up very well, so that's a possibility. Me and you have a history. I think the two of us squaring up will be a lot of fun and at least be entertaining, and we could definitely throw down with each other blow for blow. So those would be fun. I've already beaten Papa West. I don't want him. I've already beat him, so I don't need that. But anybody else, I'll be happy to face if that's the case. But yeah, Madi and you both intrigue me as potential competitors. That could be really good matches.
All right. Well, sir, once again, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and sit you in the back. Congratulations on your victory. And I will bring in your opponent, Mr. Jonathan Peck, sir. It was a valiant performance on your end. I think, unfortunately, this wasn't necessarily a detriment of your debating. So I think you had some good points in there. It was just pure will and dedication on Austin's part. But how are you feeling coming out of this? I'm honestly not sure if he's there. He is not moving.
Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to leave that in because that was a weird bit. All right. So, Jonathan, my question to you is, just kind of how are you feeling overall following the match?
Yeah, I did not go the way I planned. I originally hoped. Yeah, getting blown out like that feels a bit embarrassing along with it. So, not the one that I just had a few seconds ago. Yeah, very embarrassing.
All right, man. And then I guess the final question that I'll have for you before we let you go is, unfortunately, with the loss tonight, your season, at least this year, is of course over. Ending. We've been, with the exception of the small little 2-week breaks here or there, we've been going pretty consistently since August of 2021. At the end of that period, you come out with a 1-3 record. Obviously, not as many matches as you would have necessarily liked to have played. Not as many wins as you would have liked. But overall, how do you feel about your progression as a player going forth and going into next year?
Next year I'll be more deliberate and more focused on there. When I was doing my debating along with it, I can't keep up pace. I felt like there's some instances maybe I could have stayed more pace than my competitors sometimes. So I think that's maybe my mentor kind of sort of reflects on it. So I really hope maybe next year if I get another shot to basically just kind of counter that or basically rebound from that.
Okay. All right. Well, sir, once again, I appreciate you being here. Congratulations on the performance. Of course, the result did not go your way, but I think it was a valiant effort, and I do look forward to having you back next year in the Battleground. We will see you then, sir. Take care. As I go ahead and put you in the back. And guys, that is it. And again, the story here is all Austin. Again, he's been the player from the jump who I think really showed that valiant effort early on, and things just the chips had not fallen in his path, so to speak, up until this point. But a knockout win is certainly a good way to try and put yourself back on track. And as we said there, he seemed to be edging towards, if he could swing above his weight and go for that higher competitor, he might like that opportunity. And who knows, maybe it does fall his way. We will have to see later in the year when that scheduling happens. But guys, once again, thank you so much for sticking with us through the match. If you have not already subscribed to the channel, rate the video, drop a comment, engage in the channel, join the Facebook pages that we have, TMG Entertainment or Trivia. Either or will get you the information that you need. And stick around because we have more great Battleground coming at you guys every single week. This weekend in particular, we have the tournament finals from our summer invitational matchup. We have Jeremy Adams and Amaru Moses, who have made it to the finals of that little mini tournament, taking each other on for the chance to earn a title match against the currently undefeated as champion Henry Sanchez, which is a big undertaking for anyone stepping into that seat next. We will see how they do. With that said, on behalf of my great competitors, Austin Howell, Jonathan Peck, on behalf of my judges, John Marr, Stacy, and Brian, and on behalf of the producers here at Movie Battleground, my name is Aaron Knoll, and we will see you next time. Take care, everybody.